Hello everyone, my name is Sony and welcome to my first ever walkthrough video, something I have created both for learning and to show how I approach real analytics question using Google Analytics. In this video, I'll be looking into how user engagement differs between new and returning visitors and which pages are most effective at bringing users back. So here's a task I'm working on between May 12th and June 12th, 2025, how does engagement vary across devices for new versus returning users? And which pages are most effective at pulling returning users back in? So, to do this analysis, I am using Explore tab in Google Analytics. Compared to the default report section, Explore gives us much more control and flexibility. Here we can build our own reports using exactly the dimensions and matrices we want, and we can even create visual breakdowns. We can add filters and apply custom segments. Now, once you are inside the Explore tab, you will see 6 different techniques you can choose from. Let me explain what each one does, and more importantly, when and why you would actually use it in a real analysis. So, the first freeform technique is one of the most flexible of all. You can just drag in dimensions, metrics, and segments to build tables, bar charts, scatter plots, etc., all in one place. It's perfect for exploratory analysis when you don't know exactly what you're looking for it, or when you want to experiment with relationships between variables. Example in this case would be if you want to compare engagement rate by device and user type, identify top pages by views per session. This is where freeform can be used. Talking about the second technique, funnel exploration. This technique helps you visualize the step by step path a user takes and where they drop off. You can define each step manually, like, you know, firstly by viewed product, and then add it to cart, and then checkout, then purchase. This is ideal for measuring conversion efficiency. Example, if you want to track how well returning users complete onboarding steps or page flows. Now, the third technique that we have is path exploration. This shows the actual journey users take, not predefined like funnels, but originally tracked by Google Analytics. It's great for discovering unexpected behavior like what users do after landing on a blog or whether they backtrack. Example, if you want to spot loops in navigation or figure out what brings users back to a specific page, path exploration technique can be used. Now, for segment overlap, here you can compare different user segments and where they intersect. For example, you can see how many users are both mobile users and returning users, and then create a combined audience. So, you can use this if you want to find high value audiences for remarketing or analyzing behavior patterns for combined traits. The fifth technique that we have is cohort exploration. This groups users based on shared characteristics, typically when they first visited, and lets you analyze retention over time. So, if a user came in on May 1st, you can see whether they came back on day 3rd or 7th or 14th, etc. Like, if you want to evaluate how long returning users stay engaged or whether engagement is improving over monthly cohorts, you can use cohort exploration. The last technique that we have here is user lifetime. It evaluates user value across entire life cycle, starting from when they first visited. You can track cumulative purchases, sessions, engagement time, and more. It's more than just session level analysis because it focuses on long term user impact. For example, if you want to analyze whether returning users from mobile contribute more value over time compared to desktop users, you can use user lifetime technique. In this project, I am mainly using freeform because it gives me complete control over layout, chart types, and custom filters. But by calling out these are the techniques, I want to show that I understand where each one fits in and could easily apply them based on what a business needs. Now I start with a blank report. From here, I add all the techniques and dimensions or metrics. Before diving in, let's first customize the date range. I adjust it to cover exactly May 12th to June 12th, 2025. So all the data we look at is within the right window. You can rename your exploration at the top by just clicking on the title. I am naming my exploration tab like new versus returning engagement May to June. So it's easier to keep track of. You can choose your technique from here, from this technique option. So once you're here in the freeform exploration, you can choose how you want to visualize your data. Here are the main options available. First we have is the table. It is a default thing and it is best for detailed comparison. Next that we have is a donut chart. It is good for showing proportions like how many users are new versus returning. Then we have line chart. It's best for showing trends over time. Scatter plots help identify patterns or outliers across two metrics. Bar chart is perfect for quick visual comparison between categories. Geomap is useful when you want to show user activity by location. Even though I won't be using all of these in this video, I'll explain the ones I'm working with and when you might choose others. Now before we start dragging fields into our report, let's talk about something really foundational in Google Analytics, and that's the difference between dimensions and metrics. Dimensions are qualitative attributes. They describe the characteristics or categories of data you're analyzing. Think of them as answers to the question, that is, what are we measuring? So these are not numbers, they are just labels that group and describe users, sessions, or events. On the other hand, we have metrics. Metrics are quantitative. They give you the actual numbers. Metrics always involve counting, summing, or calculating. So together, dimensions and metrics work like this. You group by dimensions and you measure with metrics. Now, just so you know, Google on Google Analytics already provides a wide range of built-in dimensions and metrics that cover most common analysis needs. So this includes things like device category, new versus returning users, page titles, engagement rate, and more. If you want to browse the full list of these built-in fields or use them when designing a custom report, API call or export, you can explore this official schema that we have here, the official documentation. This is one of the most useful resources if you're trying to understand what's available by default in Google Analytics. And yes, it's also possible to add custom dimensions and metrics depending on your setup, for example, using Google Tag Manager to track something specific. But for this video, I'll be using only built-in fields because they are already enough to help me answer the business question I'm working on around user engagement device categories and top performing pages for returning visitors. For this analysis, I am selecting the following fields based on what the business question is asking me to answer. So the dimensions that I'm going to select here is new versus established to break down the user types, and then to see how engagement differs across the devices. I'll be using device category, and page title to understand how which pages are pulling returning users back. So once this is selected, I'll just click on confirm. Now let's select the matrices. I'll be using engagement rate and then views per session. This is for evaluating content depth, and then engaged sessions for raw engagement volume. So these were chosen to cover three angles. We have user behavior, device context, and content performance. Now the question of how to decide what dimension and metrics to use. So when you're choosing your dimensions and metrics, always start with what is the business or research question? Who are we analyzing, whether it's users or sessions or events? Do I want to count or calculate or segment something? So the more specific the question is, the more focused your field selection becomes. So in this first tab, I'm exploring how engagement varies for new versus returning users across different device types. So first I select the new versus established dimension as my row dimension. I'll choose stable as my visualization and just drag and drop this here. So this tells us whether a user is considered new or established, meaning they have visited before. Like new refers to first time users, established means returning users. Next, I'll drag the device category into the column. This breaks the data out by platform like desktop, tablet, mobile, and smart TV. And for the metric, I'll choose engagement rate. As we can see, Google Analytics automatically builds a table comparing all combinations of user type and the device category. Overall, the total engagement rate across all users is 38.4%. Looking at the established, or you can say the returning users, they show a high 66.4%. 66.4% is the engagement rate on desktop. A solid 57.1% is on mobile, but a lower 47.2% on tablet and 0% on smart TV, likely due to low or no returning users in that segment. So this highlights that returning users are much more engaged overall, especially on desktop and mobile. Now switching to the new users, they show 60.6% on desktop, 17.9% on mobile, 59.3% on tablet, and surprisingly 62.5% on smart TV. So this highlights that the engagement is decent for new users on most devices except on mobile, which is significantly lower and worth investigating further. We also have this not set group. It performs poorly across all the devices, especially mobile and tablet, and this likely signals a data quality or implementation issue. This one view gives me a side by side comparison of engagement across device and user types. For example, the low engagement for the new users could suggest a poor first time mobile experience, be a slow page load speeds, or even incorrect event tracking setup. Meanwhile, returning users show strong engagement, especially on desktop, which tells me that existing users are having smoother or valuable session. Now let's just go to the second tab by using the freeform technique. I'm going to use a bar chart to give a visual comparison of engagement rate across user types. I start by selecting the visualization as bar chart and then setting the dimension. If I just double click on it, I'll get it here, and then metrics as engagement rate. Bar charts are incredibly effective when you want to communicate quick comparison between a few categories. In this case, I'm comparing the engagement performance of new users versus the returning users. The visual immediately tells me what I need to know even without reading the numbers. What we can see here is the established users have the highest engagement rate by far. This aligns with what we saw in the first tab. Returning users are more familiar with the site and more likely to stay longer or explore further. Next, we have the not set group. Their engagement rate is somewhere in the middle, but because we don't know exactly who they are, it is hard to interpret this with confidence. And lastly, we have new users, a key point. It actually show the lowest engagement rate in this comparison, and this reinforces a very important point that first time visitors may not instantly connect with the site, especially on certain devices, which I showed earlier in the device breakdown. So this chart isn't just about visuals. It shows that I know when to use the right type of visualization based on the story I want to tell. In this case, I wanted a clear, digestible snapshot of user type performance, and a bar chart does that better than a table. It also gives me a chance to explain why engagement differs, not just show that it does. Now that I have seen how returning users um, show higher engagement overall, I want to dig deeper and find out which pages are actually bringing those users back. So, in the third tab, I need to create a custom segment. I click on the plus icon under the segments panel on the left side of the Explore tab. This opens up a menu where I can either choose a pre-built segment or create one from scratch. So Google Analytics offer three core types of custom segments here. It's user segment, session segment, and event segment. User segment tracks users across session. We can use this when you want to group people based on something they have done at any time, like users who made a purchase or users who returned after a gap. Session segment focuses on session level conditions. For example, I can filter for users who entered via a camp or visited a specific page in that one session. Then we have event segment. It targets specific events. This is helpful when you want to isolate behavior based on event names, like video starts, throws, or form submission. In this project, I am gonna select user segment because I want to filter based on the user's identity, specifically whether they are returning or not. I also want to quickly highlight these steps at the bottom of the segment screen. We have general, it's a pre-built segment. Like these are all the pre-built ones. We have shopping. It is mainly focused on e-commerce behavior like cart abandoners, checkout starters, and so on. The templates are helpful shortcuts to common filters or use cases. Predictive, these use Google Analytics machine learning models to forecast actions. Like you can see whether which are the users who are likely to make a purchase in the next 7 days. In this walkthrough, I'm building a custom segment manually, but for real-time project, using predictive segments can be a powerful way to personalize marketing. So in the segment builder, I select new versus established, new versus returning, and then I add a filter to this. Exactly matches returning. So this will isolate just returning users across the entire data set. Once saved and applied, before that we can rename this segment as returning, and then just in the bracket segment, and then just click on apply. So this is where we have our segment saved, and it is already applied here, as you can see, segment comparison. And then with my segment being applied, I then add my page title as a dimension, and I'll be using two other matrices like views per session and engage session. If I just double click on it, it will automatically come here. You don't have to always drag and drop it. So as we can see in the final table, these are the pages that shows whether returning users are interested in the products or not. You can see these are the pages which has views per session, like 6 views per session, and the average is 4.94. So this segment based breakdown helps me identify which pages are mostly successful in pulling returning users back in, and which ones keeps them actively engaged. So for an e-commerce or content team, this could be used to highlight which sections drive loyalty and optimize underperforming uh, pages and prioritize future UX enhancement based on engagement behavior. So, working on this project helped me understand how flexible Google Analytics can be, but also how important it is to ask the right question before jumping into charts. I didn't just visualize things, I asked why each dimension matters, what each metric tells me, and whether my segment is answering the business question. In my next video, I'll take this further. What if we want to track something Google Analytics doesn't track by default? That's where GTM, that is Google Tag Manager, comes in. I'll show how to set up custom event tracking, push values to the data layer, and configure events inside Google Analytics. This was my first ever walkthrough, and I created it both to, as I said, to learn and to teach, and I hope it gives you a sense of how I think, analyze, and explain data. Thanks for watching, and feel free to contact me if you would like to know more about my work. Thank you all.